Today, our team will present a comprehensive overview of the key internal and external stakeholders associated with the mining organisation BHP. We will outline the stakeholder groups we have identified, supported by a visual representation of their relative levels of power and interest to clearly illustrate their positioning within the stakeholder landscape. We will explore specific needs, values, concerns, and expectations of each stakeholder group, as well as the potential impact they may have on or experience from BHP's operations. Additionally, we will explain and justify the methodology used to identify these stakeholders, providing insight into their influence and highlighting strategies BHP can adopt to engage with them effectively and constructively. We have identified the key internal and external stakeholders relevant to the mining organisation BHP. These include government bodies, investors, employees, local communities, and Indigenous Australians. Each of these stakeholder groups play a significant role in BHP operation and broader social licence to operate. To gain a deeper understanding of their influence and priorities, each group has been individually analysed. This analysis takes into account the specific needs, values, concerns, and expectations, providing a well-rounded view of the diverse interests that BHP must navigate in its stakeholder strategy. As a global leader in the mining industry, the company emphasizes creating an environment where employees feel valued, supported, and empowered to contribute their skills and expertise. With operations spanning over 90 international locations, BHP has a significant presence in Australia, Asia, Europe, North America, and South America. As of the 2024 financial year, the company employs a total of 40,872 employees worldwide. The largest workforce concentration is in Australia, where 31,155 employees are contributed to BHP's operations. According to company data, 95.3% of employees are engaged on a full-time basis, while 2.8% work part-time. The remaining workforce is employed under fixed-term or casual contracts, constituting less than 2% of the total employee base. BHP employs 262 senior leaders, 1,300 managers, and 18,000 supervisory personnel, ensuring strong leadership and operational efficiency across its global sites. In 2017, Yandi employed 734 individuals, reflecting the site's substantial workforce dedicated to maintaining production efficiency and operational excellence. Skilled operators, engineers, and administrative personnel are positions amongst the diverse and highly trained mining operations team. To support career growth, BHP has established industry-leading development programs. These initiatives are designed to nurture the best minds and problem solvers, equipping them with the skills and experience needed to contribute to BHP's future success. Through its commitment to diversity, professional development, and flexible work opportunities, BHP continues to strengthen its reputation as an employer of choice within the global mining industry.
BHP Group's ownership structure is predominantly composed of public companies and individual investors, who collectively hold approximately 97.69% of the company's stock, whilst institutional investors account for around 2.31%. These shareholders are primarily concerned with long-term value creation, sustainable growth, and responsible environmental social governance or ESG practices. BHP addresses these priorities through transparent communication, strategic investment in future-focused projects, and a strong commitment to operational excellence and consistent shareholder returns. To ensure shareholder views are reflected in decision-making, BHP actively engages with its investor base, particularly on ESG matters. Feedback from shareholders and analysts is regularly shared with the board through senior leadership, establishing robust framework for aligning corporate strategy with investor expectations. This ongoing dialogue strengthens governance and reinforces BHP's focus on sustainable long-term growth. Strong operational performance underpins this commitment. In the 2023-24 financial year, BHP delivered record volumes at Western Australian Iron Ore and grew global copper production by 9% for its second consecutive year, resulting in a final dividend of 74 US cents per share and a 53% payout ratio. The company's continued investment in iron ore projects across Western Australia highlights its focus on diversification and future growth. Despite short-term market volatility, BHP's disciplined strategy, Tier 1 assets, and a healthy balance sheet position help it to maintain strong returns and deliver sustainable outcomes for shareholders.
Government stakeholders, particularly the Department of Mines Industry Regulation and Safety, DMIRS, and the Environmental Protection Authority, EPA, are highly engaged and hold significant power in ensuring BHP's operations comply with environmental, safety, and industry regulations. Their influence is direct, especially through audits and compliance checks that shape BHP's ability to operate within the regulatory standards. In contrast, federal departments typically show lower day-to-day engagement that can exert significant influence when international obligations come into play, such as climate targets under the Paris Agreement or Indigenous rights frameworks. If BHP fails to meet these evolving environmental or social standards, consequences can include sanctions, legal disputes, and reputation damage, all of which affect long-term business strategy. Notably, conflicting interests exist within the government stakeholder group. For instance, DMIRS may focus on economic growth and industry development, whereas DWER and EPA prioritize environmental sustainability. These competing priorities can cause tension in regulatory decision-making and project approvals. To navigate this complexity, BHP should engage with government stakeholders early in project planning, ensuring open and transparent communication about compliance, community outcomes, and environmental impacts. Flexibility is key as policy shifts and public expectations continue to evolve. Finally, BHP should track the effectiveness of stakeholder engagement using measurable indicators such as feedback cycles, response times, and compliance reporting to assess performance and identify areas for improvement. This supports regulatory alignment and reinforces BHP's ethical responsibility and accountability.
The Yandi iron ore mine, operated by BHP in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, sits on the traditional lands of the Banjima people, whose ancestral connection to the land spans over 1 million hectares. The closest town, Newman, is 178 kilometres southeast. The mine, pivotal to the region's economy, produced over 1 billion tonnes of ore in 2017, contributing significantly to BHP's operations and local prosperity. However, the economic benefit has come with challenges to the Banjima community, especially regarding cultural and environmental impacts. The Banjima people have worked with BHP and other mining companies through frameworks like the Banjima Strategic Plan to address these concerns. Despite agreements, tensions have arisen due to destruction of culturally significant sites, such as the caves in Mining Area C. Indigenous leaders like Elder Slim Parker have criticised BHP for prioritising public relations over meaningful change and have called for more control, including veto powers over mining activities on their lands. This ongoing situation highlights the broader debate over Indigenous rights and ethical responsibility of companies like BHP to protect the cultural heritage while pursuing economic development, with growing calls for more accountable and sustainable practices in the mining industry. The Power Interest Grid categorises stakeholders based on their level of influence and interest in a project. It helps identify key stakeholders by mapping their power to shape decisions and their interest in the project's outcome, guiding engagement strategies that are tailored to each group's needs and impact.
Employees play a pivotal role in BHP's daily operations, contributing significantly to the company's productivity and success. However, employees generally hold limited influence over strategic decision-making and are therefore typically positioned in the low-power, low-interest quadrant of the power interest grid. Their primary concerns tend to focus on immediate workplace issues, such as safety, fair treatment, and job security, rather than broader financial and regulatory or political considerations, which are more relevant to high stakeholders like investors and government bodies. Despite their low influence, employees remain a crucial stakeholder group. It is essential that they are consistently kept informed about their rights, workplace safety protocols, and any other operational changes that could impact them. Meanwhile, senior leaders such as the CEO and executive team occupy the high power, high interest category on the power interest grid. These individuals are directly responsible for shaping and executing BHP's long-term strategy, and they maintain a strong vested interest in the company's operational performance, financial outcomes, and stakeholder relationships. Their active engagement is critical to the company's overall success and governance, underscoring the varying levels of influence within the organizational structure.
When utilising the power interest grid to identify BHP's key stakeholders, it is clear that investors fall into the high power, high interest quadrant. They are essential to BHP's operations due to their financial influence and ongoing interest in profitability, governance, and long-term sustainability. Investors, including public and institutional stakeholders, provide capital, shape corporate governance through voting rights, and demand transparency and accountability, and particularly in areas such as executive remuneration, risk management, and ESG performance. Their presence in the high power quadrant reflects their ability to influence company strategy, while their high interest is driven by the impact that BHP's performance has on their financial returns.
To analyse BHP's government stakeholders, we apply both Freeman's stakeholder theory and power interest grid. Freeman's theory highlights that stakeholders of any group affected by or capable of affecting the organization's objectives. In this case, government bodies are definitive stakeholders due to their regulatory power, legitimacy through public mandate, and urgency in matters like compliance and environmental protection. Using the power interest grid, we classified them as high power but low interest, meaning that they don't engage daily, but their interest intensifies when issues arise, such as environmental breaches or policy non-compliance. The dual approach helps shape engagement strategies focused on maintaining transparency, ensuring regulatory compliance, and demonstrating BHP's community impact, ultimately strengthening their trust and accountability.
To identify stakeholders for the Yandi iron ore mine, we use the power interest grid. Local and Indigenous communities, particularly the Banjima people, were placed in the low power, high interest quadrant. While they may lack institutional power, their deep cultural, environmental, and social investment in the land signifies intense interest. This placement is further supported by the stakeholder salience theory, which considers three attributes: power, legitimacy, and urgency. In prioritising stakeholders, the Banjima people demonstrate legitimacy through their traditional custodianship of the land and urgency through time-sensitive concerns about the cultural site destruction, increasing their overall salience. Applying the community development theory, they must be engaged not just consultees, but as collaborative partners with agency in decision-making. To support this, gamification techniques like interactive community mapping or incentive-based feedback systems can encourage a broader, more active participation across generations.
BHP employees are categorized as low-power, low-interest stakeholders within the power interest grid. While they are central to the company's operational success, particularly through skilled labour and frontline execution, most have limited influence over strategic decision-making. Their primary concern focus on safety, job security, and fair working conditions. However, under Freeman's stakeholder theory, employees remain a core stakeholder group as they are directly impacted by the organisational outcomes. In contrast, senior leaders such as BHP's executive team and high-level managers occupy the high-power, high-interest quadrant due to their direct role in shaping and implementing company strategy. With over 20,000 BHP employees in supervisory or leadership roles, this internal segmentation highlights differing levels of influence within the workplace. To ensure trust and alignment across all levels, BHP must promote open communication, invest in professional development, and cultivate a culture that values every employee's contribution, regardless of their position in the decision-making hierarchy.
In addition to the power interest grid, the 2002 map of participation created by Bishop and Davis was applied to assess how investors are engaged. This framework identifies various levels of stakeholder participation, ranging from informing to empowerment. BHP engages investors primarily through the stages of consultation and involvement. Investors are kept informed through annual reports, market updates, ESG disclosures, and regular briefings, while feedback is actively sought through formal channels including the Investor Relations team and the ESG committee. This feedback is then communicated to senior leadership and the board. While investors are not fully empowered in terms of making decisions, their insights significantly shape corporate outcomes, aligning well with both stakeholder theory and stakeholder salience theory. By combining these analytical tools, investors were clearly identified not only as key stakeholders, but also as highly active participants in shaping BHP's strategic decision and corporate responsibility.
The government plays a
stakeholders
key
play a
regulatory
crucial
role in BHP operations using comply the
with
power,
environmental,
interest grid,
labour and
and
industry
classified as
laws.
high power, low interest.
While their primary focus is
Holding
compliance,
significant
they are generally
regulatory
supportive of the
authority,
project,
but
as
typically
iron
engaging
ore
only when
mining
major
is
issues
vital to
arise.
Australian economy.
Playing Mitchell,
Driving
driving
exports,
with stakeholder
generating
salience
public
model,
revenue, and
they are
supporting
considered
regional
definitive
development.
stakeholders.
The
As they
government plays a
possess power,
key
legitimacy,
regulatory
and
role in
urgency.
ensuring BHP
Their
operations
influence
comply
is
with
seen through
environmental,
compliance
labour and
enforcement, and they
industry
are directly
laws.
impacted by the
While their
project's
primary focus is compliance, they are
environmental,
generally
social, and
supportive of
economic
the
outcomes.
project,
This
as
includes
iron ore
accountability to
mining
the
is
public,
vital to Australian
regional
economy.
development goals, and alignment with
Driving
national
exports,
policy objectives.
generating public revenue,
Effectively
and
engaging
supporting regional
government
development.
stakeholders,
The
therefore
government
essential
plays
to
a key
maintaining
regulatory
BHP's
role in
license to
ensuring
operate
BHP
and managing
operations comply with
regulatory risks.
environmental. Local and Indigenous communities, particularly Banjima people, fall into the low-influence, high-impact quadrant for the power interest grid. Although they hold limited institutional power to shape mining strategy, they are profoundly impacted by its outcomes, socially, environmentally, and spiritually. For the Banjima, land is not just a resource, but a living, cultural, and spiritual landscape. The stakeholder salience model supports their classification as important stakeholders due to their strong legitimacy and urgency, even without formal power. Their moral authority allows them to influence public discourse and policy. Cases like Rio Tinto's $125 million compensation highlight the limitations of financial settlements, which cannot redress cultural loss or disconnection. As a result, Indigenous communities are often positioned as oppositional stakeholders, not due to resistance to development, but because traditional engagement models fail to honour non-material values. Ethical practice demands collaboration, cultural respect, and long-term dialogue. The stakeholder map categorises BHP employees as low-power, low-interest stakeholders, with concerns focused on safety, job security, and working conditions. Investors are high-power, high-interest stakeholders as they influence company performance and strategy through financial support. The government, also high-power, has significant influence over the regulations and policies impacting BHP's operations. Local communities, including Indigenous groups, are low-power, high-interest stakeholders concerned with environmental and social impacts, but limited influence on decision-making. BHP must address the diverse needs of these groups to ensure effective stakeholder management.